back, S'mores, to another spooky episode. Today we don't have ghost stories or cryptids. We're kind of going back a little ways to some of the things we used to talk about before, and that's government conspiracies. I think the last government conspiracy we talked about was it 9/11?
Wow, it might have been that long ago because I can't remember one after that. So yeah, man, it's definitely been a while since we've talked bad about the government.
Well, they haven't tried to silence us yet, so I think we're doing good.
There we go. Yeah. So yeah, welcome back, S'mores. As Will, the cowboy, has said. If you're new to us, we are Beyond the Campfire. It's a cowboy and an Indian talking about ghost stories, cryptids, conspiracy theories, and the like. If you want to connect with us, you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Our handle is Beyond Campfire or at Beyond Campfire Podcast. So you should be able to find us there. And yeah, thank you guys for joining us today. And today we will be talking about the Philadelphia Project, also known as the Philadelphia Experiment.
Oh
So
boy.
I'll just give some quick facts and then I'll let Will kind of comment. But basically, at the height of World War II, the government was allegedly doing some experiments in a Philadelphia naval shipyard, and some pretty interesting stuff happened. So, yeah, we'll talk about whether there was time travel going on, whether there was teleportation, whether there was aliens involved. So, yeah, buckle up, grab your blankets, gather around the campfire, and we will be talking about the Philadelphia experiment. Will, any thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns before we dive in?
Was there anything I know about the government and aliens? It's gonna get shady.
There we go. There we go. So, all right. Well, the Philadelphia experiment. What I'm going to do first, before I actually dive into a lot of the facts, we're actually going to start off today's episode. I asked ChatGPT to make um, a fictionalized account of Carl Allen. Carl Allen is the one eyewitness to the event. There are other eyewitnesses. Potentially, we'll talk about why maybe they don't know or why they don't remember. So
Mm.
we'll get into some maybe Men in Black type stuff going on. Uh,
Ooh.
but most of what we know about the Philadelphia experiment comes from Carl Allen, who was working as a merchant marine on another ship, and he's the one who recorded seeing the ship disappear and then reappear. And he stayed silent about it for about a decade until about the 1950s, and that's really when he started to speak about it. So we'll start with how he might have explained it. And a lot of what ChatGPT created is based off the account he gave to a book, and then we'll go from there.
All
So,
right.
alrighty, here's ChatGPT's take on Carl Allen's version of what he saw. I was 19, a merchant marine. I'd served aboard the SS Andrew Furuset, docked in Norfolk. We just delivered a shipment when they ordered us to pull back from the harbor. Something classified, they said. So I stood there, on deck, middle of the day, sky clear, like God had wiped the clouds off the table to get a better view. And then I saw it. The USS Eldridge, a sleek, proud thing, cannon class destroyer escort, fresh paint, flying colors, crew laughing on deck like boys before a dance. Then it began to hum. Not a machine hum. This was different, like it was breathing, deep, guttural, alive. The kind of sound that touches the back of your skull and says, "You shouldn't be here." I watched as coils lit up along the deck. Not lights, energy fields. Green bluish arcs like aurora borealis wrapped in copper. Then flash. The ship vanished, gone. No splash, no smoke, just emptiness, and the smell of ozone and metal in the wind. But I wasn't the only one watching. Three other sailors on my ship saw it too. One fainted, the other started vomiting, the third just walked away and never spoke again. I kept looking, and then, God help me, the Eldridge reappeared. For 3, maybe 4 seconds. But wrong. Men screaming. Some were half in, half out of the deck. One hand fused to steel. A face where a wall should have been. Like the ship came back before the men did, and their bodies tried to catch up. I saw one man walk through a bulkhead like it wasn't there. Another knelt on the deck, sobbing, repeating, I can hear all of time. Then the ship disappeared again. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. I tried to tell the Navy. They told me I was confused, that I'd seen a mirage, that the Eldridge was never in Philadelphia. Liars. I wrote to Morris Jessup because he talked about the unified field theory. Einstein, gravity bending, hidden dimensions. He was close, I could tell. But even Jessup didn't want to believe the whole truth. You see, it wasn't just science. There was something else on that deck. Something that answered the call when man ripped through space and time. You can call it science. I call it the veil. And the Eldridge didn't just go invisible, it went through, and something looked back. They say I've made it up, but I've burned the letters, left cities. Still, sometimes I dream I'm back on that dock, and the ship returns, again and again. Only this time, it doesn't disappear, and neither do I. And that's a fun way of getting into Carl Allen's account.
That's wild.
So, um, outside of the dialogue, Carl Allen did report seeing the ship disappear, then reappear. He did witness men appearing and reappearing as if they were walking through time. He did see men fused to the ship, uh, men screaming, people sobbing, shouting about time and space. So all of those things in that were what Carl Allen reported. Now we'll get into whether we believe him or not. But that's the account. The U.S. government was doing some experiments on October 28th, 1943, in the Pennsylvania shipyard. At some point, the USS Eldridge disappeared and then reappeared, and there was reports both in Philadelphia and in Virginia that the ship had appeared and then disappeared from both those locations. And that's the story. Did the ship travel through time? Did the ship teleport? That's where the mystery is. So
Mm,
that's the basic story. We'll kind of break into some theories from there. But so far, Will, any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns?
that's really freaky. I think it's like freaky to think. Imagine just you're on a boat having a good time, and then the boat disappears, and then when it reappears, you're literally fused to the metal.
Yeah.
Like that's horrendous, man.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, according to some reports, the ship vanished not just from radar but from physical sight. So Carl Allen was looking out onto the sea, and he said he just saw it disappear.
That's
Um,
crazy to think like that. Like not only did it just disappear from eyesight, but from radar. Like it just vanished.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely very interesting. I will say that. So yeah, yeah, no, it's wild. Norfolk, Virginia, and Philadelphia are over 200 miles away from each other.
Hmm.
So because the ship logs did show that the ship went from Philadelphia to Norfolk, but
Yeah.
over 2 months apart, which 2 months is enough time for it to travel that. Uh,
Yeah.
but but the claim here is that it happened on the same day that the USS Eldridge was seen in both Norfolk, Virginia, and the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. Which, if it is credibly being seen at both of those places, something weird is going on. Something happened.
Yeah. Somehow it have to get from there to there, and it's the question. Okay. So in the ChatGPT thing, it had mentioned that the Eldrick disappeared again.
Hmm.
What happened to the ship? Did it actually disappear again, and we've never seen it again, or?
Yeah. So at a certain point, it was said to have stayed in its original location, Philadelphia. What happened then is Carl Allen said the Navy very quickly swooped in and they grabbed him and took him away. And they said he said that they sat him in a room and Navy soldiers asked him what did he see. He told them what he saw, and then government agents were whispering to each other and they came in and they're just like, hey, whatever you think you saw, it wasn't that. You probably just saw a mirage, or maybe some fog came in. But yeah, whatever you thought you saw, that didn't happen. So just
Mhm.
put it out of your mind. No need to tell anybody. No need to report it. The Navy's taking care of it. The Navy's handling everything. So just let us do our thing, and as for you go about your way.
So, what happened to the ship?
Yeah. So the ship continued to operate for a while. Obviously, Alan says that the men that died there, he said there was a cover up of what happened to them. Some of them survived, although Alan reports that one of them just disappeared completely. But out of the ones that survived, he said that the government conducted experiments on them to make them forget. So, some Men in Black style stuff. I will say this: so Carl Allen is the only eyewitness to what happened, or at least the only eyewitness willing to come forward. He says all the other eyewitnesses are either too scared to talk or they've been threatened by the government.
Hmm.
He says he's also received government threats, but
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, we'll probably talk about that at some point on this podcast, like with government conspiracies. Talk about how the government can wipe their minds, but we'll talk about MK Ultra and how the government experimented with brainwashing and whether MK Ultra is still a thing. But it makes you think: could the government wipe someone's mind? Maybe.
sure, sure. Um, but yeah, after let's say this event actually happened, right? The Eldridge was, cleaned up, dead bodies were taken away, and it continued to serve as a warship during World War II. So it completed missions in North Africa. It did some later in the war. It did some missions in the Pacific theater. Never really saw any major combat, and after World War II, it was later renamed, and it continued to serve in other places. And it was decommissioned in 1992, and then in the late 1990s, it was sold for scrap. And so, nothing, nothing too crazy afterward. There was a brief amount of time where it was said to have disappeared for a few weeks after the incident, and that's where people say that that's where they were removing either time travel devices or teleportation devices, or things like that. But I mean, pretty much after the incident, it seems to have had a pretty normal ship career
Service.
after.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because I was just asking because I know the ChatGPT story said they saw it there and then it disappeared, then it reappeared, then it disappeared again. So that's why
so
I didn't know if the ship had just if it was still serviced.
Yeah. It continued to be used for a while. Um, Here's where things get a little bit weird. So, 1950s, Carl Allen finally starts to tell people about it. He connects with this guy named Jessup. I believe it's Morris Jessup. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, Morris Jessup, and Jessup writes this book about the Philadelphia experiment.
Mhm.
The Navy um, begins to investigate. They contact Jessup and they're like, "Hey, what is this book about? What are you trying to say about us?" And Jessup sends them a copy of his book, but heavily annotated by himself and by Allen. And that special edition that they sent to the Navy came to be known as the Varro edition. And the Varro edition talked about secret government projects. It talked about extraterrestrial technology. It talked about teleportation, and it also talked about mysterious beings that were simply referred to known as them. Now, they sent that to the Navy. This is where the Navy starts to act a little bit weirdly. The Navy begins to print multiple copies of the Varro edition and circulates it around the office to Navy secret intelligence. Now,
Ooh.
if the Navy really believed this was just some crazy guy that was making up something, because that's what's usually alleged against Carl Allen, why were they printing multiple copies of this and spreading it around to the office?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a little fishy.
Here's another strange thing that happened. The Navy started to show up to Jessup's place and they were telling him, "Hey, dude, you need to keep this quiet. Allen can't be trusted." Now, here, here's where the government maybe might have a little bit of a case. And if you guys have been watching this podcast long enough, I don't like to say I'm a government defender, but I sometimes I give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Right? So, all right, here's me putting on my government defense hat, at least a little bit. Carl Allen was known to have some mental issues in his life. He was known to believe a lot of weird stuff. However, here's where I think the government's case hurts them a little bit. Carl Allen, by several accounts, was also a very, very intelligent man. And again, yeah, he did have some weird beliefs. He did struggle with mental issues at time,
Yeah.
but he was an excellent student. He did well in school. He was known to be brilliant in the work he did on ships. So I mean, this is a guy that this isn't just some guy that is just off the street looking to make a quick buck. He
Yeah.
seemed to be very much a guy that saw something strange and really believed in what he saw.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, the government, they're just like, yeah, Alan's this crazy guy. You can't really believe him or trust him, and they continue to put pressure on Jessup for a while. And now here's the crazy thing: in 1959, just a few years after Jessup had published his book, not the Varro edition, only the Navy has the Varro edition. The general public doesn't have the Varro edition. Jessup died under mysterious circumstances in 1959. Now, the official government account is that he was killed by suicide. However, many of his friends and family close to him said that he was not the kind of guy that would just kill himself. So
That
who knows?
golly, there's so much, you know?
Right,
It's
right,
like if you were the government, and this guy was going around and everything he was saying was wrong, completely wrong through and through, and you're just like, he's just some whack job. Why are
sure.
you gonna go tell this guy stay away from him? Don't listen to him. If he's not telling the truth, then just ignore it. But by the government going in and saying, don't listen to this guy, spreading the pamphlets around and everything, it makes you kind of think the guy might be right.
Yeah,
Because it's like if it's a lie, why are you gonna try to cover it up?
Sure, sure. So for Alan, he reported something strange. He told it to Jessup. Jessup gave a document to the government, which the government circulated among themselves, and then he died under mysterious circumstances
Yep.
just later. So all of these ways pretty heavily in favor of Alan being onto something. Now, I'm gonna be a little bit of a Debbie Downer. I think the government has at least a little bit of a case, but there could be holes in the government's case too. So here's some of the government's case. Uh, the Navy did an internal investigation in the 1990s, and they reported that nothing happened and that no such experiment ever took place. Now, again, it's an internal Navy investigation, so they could just be covering their own backs, right?
Yeah.
Um, here's some support they offered. Okay, they're not just pulling things out of their butt. The Navy showed the logs of the USS Eldridge, and it showed that the deck logs of the Eldridge showed that they were never in Philadelphia on the dates that Allen claimed. They're either in the Bahamas or on their way to the Bahamas. Now, could deck logs be faked? Yeah, they could be faked. I mean, here's the thing: if the government really was trying to do some kind of investigation or try some kind of experiment, would they really want people to know that the ship is around? I think not. I think not.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
The Navy also did give this as their third and final reasoning. They said that the experiment Allen described is not consistent with known physics, which I, I mean, I don't know, government. Maybe you guys have figured out something and you just don't want to tell us. So, I don't know. It's one of those things where what the Navy said, I don't think that's enough to completely vindicate the government. Uh, here's where I think they do have some vindication, and then Will, you and me can talk about which theory
Yeah.
we believe before we get into our Chat GPT story to end the thing. But here's where I think the government maybe does have somewhat of a case. Allen did say other people witnessed it.
Yeah.
However, he never gave any full names. He only gave initials, which maybe he was threatened by the government, but if you felt threatened by the government, why even give initials or say anything at all? Um, so I don't know. Part of that makes me feel like maybe Alan might be making this up. I don't know. And you and me can talk about
Yeah.
that in a second. Of what's the likelihood of him doing that? What's the likelihood of him not doing that? Uh, no other people have ever corroborated Alan's story. However, again, there could be good reason for that, right? If the
Yeah.
government bring people or telling people that this hasn't happened, that this hasn't happened, don't believe it, then yeah, some people might not do that. For me, at the very least, though, I usually like to hear multiple sources verify a story. And to me, at the very least, it bothers me that Alan is the only one talking. And again, there could be good reasons for why that's the
Oh
case.
yeah.
But at the very least, that makes me think the government maybe has a little bit of a case. Um, and then the last thing is several of the crewmen from the Eldridge have come forward over the decades and have said they never participated in any kind of experiment,
Yeah.
that they weren't in Philadelphia on the dates that they said, and they talked about how Allen's claims were a source of science fiction. Now, again, if there's government pressure involved, these guys could be lying, but
Yeah.
again, who knows? So that's really that's really all the information I have. Um, with that information, I guess let's go ahead and get into it. So, Will, do you believe Carl Allen's version of events, or at least some version of his events, or do you think that the government is right? That he's just a crazy guy, probably was making up some stuff.
I
How
I
about
think some of what Alan says could be truthful.
okay?
And I think the reason being, and the reason why I would side with him more than the government, and it's not just because I don't like the government. Um, there's just a lot that the government did that like an innocent person would not do. You know, like if it's one thing to be like, okay, Alan's crazy, don't listen to him, don't mind him, but to take what he had stated and pass it around the office to all these other high officials, you know, it's really like, okay, well, why would you do that? You know, and then on top of that, if Alan was just such a crazy guy, why didn't you just kind of ignore him, let him spew what he wants to spew, make himself look like an idiot? But you go to the guy he's working with and say, don't listen to him. He's crazy. Like, don't. No matter what, don't listen to him. And it's kind of like, if he was just being crazy, why not just let him be crazy and let people think he's crazy? Why throw fuel on his fire and try to like cover it up? You know,
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I wish we had the Varro edition, and I wish we could actually see what was written in there and what they were talking about. Because I think if we had the Varro edition, it's one of those things where I'd be like, hey, well, what do we make of that, right? Why was the government circulating that around? Uh, but yeah, I mean, even me for it to exist, I sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely on the government side on this one. To me, I'm actually about 50-50. So I think there's enough there to possibly vindicate the government, but some of the I don't know. There's just a lot of
yeah.
there.
So what happened to the document?
So the government eventually did release a version, and they said, yeah, this is the Varro document. Um, However, um, the original one is uh, is not available, and it's one of those things where the handwriting is transcribed, but it wasn't scanned. And so, if you wanted to look it up, you could see like a version of the Varro document, but there's pretty good evidence to suggest that the government doctored it. They took some stuff out or edited other portions out. So, as far as the
There we
original,
go.
do we have the actual one? Who
Yeah.
knows? Who knows?
Well,
Uh,
that right there, I mean, that just kind of goes into the thing about the government. It's like, if you want people to believe this, it's kind of like I guess to kind of give like a real world example. Steven over here, right? He's dated this girl, and we'll say it's that one chick, that model, and like you know, Steven sent her a text, and then she took the text and doctored it to make it look like he's the bad guy, and he's not.
sure,
It's kind of like, you know, I feel like and it's like she did something. Steven said something about it. She took his words and twisted them to fit a better objective to make him look more crazy. I mean, it's kind of the same thing. It's like the government did something, and then like the public's like, well, why don't we see what this guy's talking about? They're like, okay, yeah, we'll give it to you. Let us change the words first.
yeah,
So I could definitely see there being a case that the Philadelphia experiment could have happened. I could see a case for maybe it didn't happen. It depends on the kind of person you are and whether or not you want to believe the government. But even if you are someone who believes the government, like Steven over here, you kind of got to ask the questions like, why is the government acting this way? Why are they releasing a doctored version of this thing? Why are they telling this guy not to listen to this guy because he's crazy? Why are they passing it around to their friends at the high security office? It's more questions than answers.
sure, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I have a theory that if it did happen, I'm not sure it happened quite the way Alan talked about it. I do think he probably did see some green energy field or some green fog. Whether it's because the ship actually disappeared or not, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the USS Eldridge was actually doing some experiments that day, right? So,
Yeah. I mean,
uh,
that's the thing. Like, so we could ask this question here where if we're saying that, where maybe he dramatized some of the stuff, I guess the better question is, do you think that the ship did time travel, or do you think the ship teleported, or do you think it was some other type of experiment?
yeah, and I'll go on record as saying I don't think it time traveled. I don't think it teleported. I do think there probably was a green energy blast if what he's saying is correct. And to me, it just seems more likely than not that the U.S. was trying to test some new weaponry, and he saw that, and that would also go along with mines, the men being like fused into the steel. Um, I could see something like that possibly having have happened, if any.
Right.
Now, as far as it disappearing 3 to 4 seconds, reappearing, and things like that, I would be more likely to believe it time traveled and teleported is if there were eyewitnesses on the Norfolk, Virginia side of things. But or no, wait. I think Alan. Let me recheck. I think Alan was at the Norfolk, Virginia side. I don't know if he was on the Pennsylvania side per se. Wait, let me see. Was Alan? But anyway, that's why I'm less likely to believe the teleportation theory because he was at one of the locations but not the other location. And if there was somebody at the other location saying that the same things as he did, then yeah, I'd be more likely to believe that. So
Yeah. Now I'm just going to ask you real quick before we get the ChatGPT story. Obviously, you're 50-50. You know, you think the ship could have time traveled. You're not too sure.
yeah.
Do you believe in time travel?
Do I believe in time travel? Okay, I'll say this. I think at some point we could possibly find a way to time travel into the future. However, I don't know if we could ever go backwards in time. Uh,
Mm,
there's a few physics, time, logistical reasons I could give into that, but that's going to take way too much time to explain. Uh, but yeah, I think we could travel forward into the future maybe one day. But if you did that, I don't think you'd be able to come back. Uh, nor do I think you'd be able to like go back to the American Revolution or to Jesus or something like that. Like I think that's not going to be able to happen.
well, we'll make sure we make you a believer about time travel because there's a couple conspiracy theories we talk about where there are photos of people who have time traveled. Um,
Okay, okay. Well,
so
hey,
and there is that time machine in the Vatican.
we still have to do an episode on that at some point.
Did you? Yeah. So okay, so you possibly believe time travel could be a thing. Do you think that teleportation could be a thing?
I'm not too sure. Yeah, I'm actually more likely to believe in time travel than teleportation, which might sound weird because it's like, wait, teleportation seems to be an easier thing than time travel. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know if we'll be able to accomplish teleportation, at least not in our lifetime.
Yeah.
But that's my take.
Yeah. So I'm on the fence about this. I do think something happened. I do think teleportation or time travel could have been involved. Um, possibly. I just think the way the government acted about it kind of throws a little shade on the whole thing. Steven, you're 50-50.
Yep,
So are we ready to board the Eldridge and
yep. Let's do it, man. So let me pull it up. Well, yep. All right, here we go. Okay, Echoes of Eldridge, a Beyond the Campfire story. Okay, here we go. The gates had long rusted shut, but Will knew how to climb fences. The old shipyard was a graveyard of forgotten wars. Steel hulks, hollow cranes, and shadows that remembered things better left buried. Stephen followed behind him, flashlight in one hand, Bible in the other. Hard to believe, Will muttered, that a ship vanished from this place, and nobody noticed. Stephen raised an eyebrow. People noticed. The Navy just told them that they were crazy. They were here following a tip from a retired engineer, a trembling man in a nursing home who claimed he saw the USS Eldridge reappear for exactly 4 seconds in the old dry dock. That was 3 nights ago, and he wasn't the only one. The dry dock loomed ahead, an enormous trench lined with corroded rails. Empty now, but the air felt wrong, charged. Stephen knelt and placed a hand on the concrete. Static, he whispered, like something torn through here, not just physically, spiritually. Will walked slowly, his boots clinking on the loose bolts. Then he saw it, the outline of a ship. Not solid, but shimmering, like a mirage made of fog and metal. And for the briefest moment, the name came into view, etched in ghostly gray. USS Eldridge. The air cracked like lightning. Both men stumbled back. The ship blinked out of view, but something else remained. A man stood at the center of the dock, or what was left of one. He wore a 1940s naval uniform. Half his body flickered like a bad signal. His face was twisted, not in pain, but in confusion, as though he still didn't know he was dead. Where am I? The ghost asked, voice echoing in layers. We were just at sea. Stephen stepped forward, gently. Sir, what's the last thing you remember? Everything turned green. The whole deck glowed, then screaming, and silence. His image crackled. My, my brother. He was standing right beside me. And then I was in the walls. Will's throat tightened. We've heard stories of men fused into the ship. Is that true? The sailor didn't answer, just looked down at his flickering hands. I I can't feel time anymore. Then the air shook. A deep, metallic hum reverberated across the deck. The ghost turned, panicked. It's coming again! The space where the ship had appeared began to glow. But this time, it didn't shimmer. It opened. A rift, spinning like a whirlpool of static and smoke. And from within, voices. Static. Something else closer together. English, German, Japanese, French, and languages unspoken since Babel. Stephen grabbed Will's arm. Uh, this isn't just physics. Something else came through in 1943. Something, something beyond science. Will's hand went instinctively to his sidearm, even though it wouldn't help. What, what do we do? Stephen looked down directly at Will. Then, all of a sudden, a burst of green energy flashed before their eyes. For several minutes, time felt still. They could see each other and they could see the energy around them, but it felt as if they were floating. Nothing on the ground, nothing above them, just green, vibrant energy all around them. Then, all of a sudden, They were back in the shipyard. The ghostly ship, the green energy fields, all gone. Only the silence of the shipyard remained. Later, they walked back to their truck. Will was quiet. Time travel? Ghost sailors? Green energy beams? That that was a lot. Stephen smiled faintly. Sometimes the strangest stories are just warnings dressed as mysteries. Will looked up at the stars. Well, I'm fine with letting the good Lord above handle space and time. I'll just stick to right now. Stephen chuckled. The two of them drove off into the night. Two men carrying truth in a world full of haunted echoes. And that's that.
Look at that. Well, thank you guys for listening. Yeah, we appreciate you guys. Trying to think if there's any announcements we got. Technically, I guess we could announce this at the time of this being released. As you guys have heard, we've talked about Beyond the Media a whole bunch, and the idea behind that. And at the time of this recording, that'll be an official thing. We've been talking about it. We've had at least 2 podcasts kind of coming underneath it. We've got Beyond the Campfire as the flagship. We got Beyond the Bible coming out in September. We've technically got a gaming channel kind of being worked on. Pretty cool. But yeah, as of Friday, we are officially signing all the documents to make it true. So if you have anything you'd like, if you have any podcast ideas, let me pull out my phone right quick, make sure I got the right email. We might set up a better email, but for right now, this is the email we have. Where's it at? Where's my notes? Sorry, could have been a little bit better. Yeah, you can look for us. You can email us at beyondthemediallc@outlook.com. Pitch us your idea, and you might get a podcast. I'm not guaranteeing it, but you might. So that is all I have. You have anything, Steve, for us?
I think that'll do it.
All right. If you go on a cruise, watch out for the green mist.